Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books, and I hope you're all very, very well. Today is a video that I've been looking forward to making for a year. I saw Jen Campbell do this video last year and a few other people did it off the back of that, whereby people looked back through their best books of the year videos and then made a list of all the books that they'd mentioned and then talked through what their relationship with those books are now, which I think is really, really great to sort of revisit books that you loved so much that you've included them on your best books of the year video, and then to now look back at them. And some of these, I mean, I'm looking back through 5 years worth of videos. So I've got my 2015 favourites, 16, 17, 18 and 19 favourites. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5 years worth of favourites. And I'm really looking forward to doing this. So there's 50 books here. Actually, there's 49 books here because in 2017, I said there was 10 books and there was only 9. So I must have missed one off that time. And I'm going to work through these. I've watched the videos already, but I'm going to talk through and insert some lovely questionable thumbnails of me through the years holding up these books, and then I'm going to pick out which of those books are still my favourites now. So I'm hoping to end up with 10 just because I love a nice round number, apart from in 2017 when I did 9. But yeah, I think we're going to be here a while, guys, so grab yourself a cuppa like I have and let's settle in. Let's start with 2015. So I've got 10 books in 2015 that I worked my way through. So I'm going to start with number 10 and then work my way up to number 1. I've got my highlighter to highlight the ones that I loved so much. So some of these there'll be a picture for because I've got the book in the wrap-up video, and sometimes there won't be. But the first one there is a picture for, and that's The Rental Heart and Other Stories by Kirsty Logan, which I included in this favourites of 2015. Don't remember anything about this book at all, literally at all. I know it's a short story collection, but that's all I remember. So I obviously can't include that in the best books of the past 5 years for me because I can't remember anything about it. So soz, but that's the way it is, straight in with one I don't remember. The next one is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which is a book that I did very much enjoy. It's a sci-fi book. Do you know what? I'm going to move here because I've got a feeling we're going to need to put those. But we're going to need to put the pictures there, so this is live happening for you. The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Very much enjoyed this book. I wouldn't say it's one of my bestest favourites from the past 5 years, but I can understand why it was on that list, and I'll let it stay on that list. It's actually a book that I've reread once since then as well. It's a sci-fi book about a team of people travelling through space, and their job is to punch holes in one side of space that will then come out in another side of space. There's all sorts of different people on that, people and different species on that spaceship, and I very much enjoyed it, and I actually recommended it to a few people afterwards. So I will allow that to stay on the list because I did very much enjoy it. The next one is Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. This was a book which I believe is sort of a YA retelling of The Handmaid's Tale almost, and although I enjoyed it at the time and I feel like it's a very important book for some to read, I don't think I would include that in my favourites of all time. So it's not getting a highlight. No books have got a highlight yet of my bestest books ever, but I remember reading it at the time, finding it important. We read it for one of my book clubs, I can't remember which one, but we had a really good discussion about it, and yeah, I think that year it probably was one of my favourite books, so I can understand that. The next one is This One Summer by Gillian and Mariko Tamaki, which was one of the first graphic novels that I bought myself. So I feel like I might have been a bit swept up in the hype of graphic novels, having never read graphic novels before, and then coming to BookTube and finding out that there was this thing called graphic novels. I feel like in the early years of my best books of 2000, my best books videos, a lot of graphic novels featured, and they probably aren't my favourite now. Again, enjoyable experiences, but if I was looking at, if someone was to say to me now, what did you think you gave This One Summer? I would say I probably gave it 2.5 or a 3, because although I enjoyed it, it was no more, it wasn't groundbreaking for me, and I think for me, the test of a favourite book is one that I would literally drop everything and pick up now, or I could tell you everything about it now, or I would recommend it to everybody now. And yeah, I don't get that with a lot of the early graphic novels I bought or read, but I think I was just swept up in the excitement of reading something slightly new. The next one It's also a book that I very much enjoyed, but I feel like I wouldn't include it in my best books of the past 5 years. That's Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. Very much enjoyed that when I read it. I used to really love a thriller. I still do really love a thriller. But before I'd sort of found my reading groove, thrillers were like my go-to books, and quite often my go-to books would also be books that were on the Richard and Judy book club list. If anyone was in the UK, Richard and Judy are a couple who do like daytime TV presenting. They don't do it so much anymore actually, and they had a book club with W.H. Smith, one of the bookshops here, and I used to sort of read through that list of there because I didn't really know where else to go for book recommendations. So I think maybe that's why I picked that up there. Again, a good book, very much enjoyed it, but not worthy of a place on my best books of 2000, the best books of the last 5 years. My God, there's gonna be a lot of old jumbly words in this. The next one is one of those aforementioned graphic novels, and actually I probably enjoyed this one a little bit more than I did this one Summer, and that's the Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg. That was one of the first, I think that was the first graphic novel that I ever heard about and managed to get my hands on from the library. Again, enjoyed it, but not worthy of a place. So far we're however many books in, and none of them have been given a highlight and a place on my best books of the last 5 years. The next one is really a strange, I can't believe I even included it, because again, I enjoyed it at the time, but I definitely wouldn't say it was one of my favourite books. It was The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett, which is a little novella about the Queen discovering reading, and I think it's like someone that works in the kitchens or something becomes a sort of like reading assistant and helps her pick out books, and etc. And yeah, again, it was fine, but I don't know why I included it in my best books of 2015. It's an odd one. Like, I mean, obviously the storyline saved me. It's a novella though, there's not much to it. The next one is one that will definitely be getting a highlight, because actually, as I just said, I count books that my favourite books of all time as books that I would reread at any time, and I'm actually rereading this at the moment. So this is Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, and I'm listening to the audiobook of this at the moment, and I've read it, I probably say I'd read it about 3 times since then, and listened to it twice. I listened to it on audiobook last year, and I'm listening to it on audiobook this year. I think it's bloody fantastic, really original idea. You follow a woman called Ursula, and it's a book. It's almost like a book of like what could happen. So you're listening about her. You're following her life, and to begin with, you start off when she's born in a storm, and the storm is so bad that the doctor doesn't get there, and Ursula dies instantly. But what happens if the doctor does manage to get there and she lives a little bit longer? And it's all to do with like what one decision makes. So for instance, one part in the book, she's sexually assaulted, and then you find out what happens to her life after that sexual assault, and how like everything just goes to shit basically. And then you revisit that moment, revisit that moment, and what happened if she was to kick the boy so that he doesn't sexually assault her, and then how her life would go from then on. Really think it's a really great book, really original idea. The characters Kate Atkinson creates are amazing. I would definitely, and I've highlighted it. It's my first highlighted one that is worthy of my best books of the last 5 years. So the next book I don't think is worthy of a place on the best books of the past 5 years, and that's Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Now I put this at number 2 in the year of 2015, and at the time I very much enjoyed it, but I feel like with a bit of distance, maybe I don't feel like this book was dealt with as much respect and tact as potentially it could have been done. Now it's a YA book about a young boy called August who's got a facial deformity. You never find out like how bad this facial deformity is, I guess is how he describes it in the book, but you're finding out about his life from different perspectives, including like himself, his mum, his sister's boyfriend, etc, etc. And I can understand why, like it is a YA book, and it is sort of like all tied up neatly in a bow, but yeah, with a bit of distance from that, I feel like maybe that could have been dealt with a little bit more, with a bit more respect and tact. And then the last book on that list, highlighter out again, because this is one of my favourite books of all time, was Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So that's getting a highlight because, as I said, that is one of my favourite books of all time. It's an amazing, amazing novel. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, I would read her shopping lists. I love everything she writes. Her novels are amazing, her short story collections are amazing, her little essay collections, her I just adore her. I just think she's amazing. And this book, Americana, of all of them, is my favourite. It's a love story primarily, which also isn't something that I'm really into, but that shows how amazing the reading is. And it's a story of Efemelu and Abinze, who are both living from Nigeria and living in Nigeria, and their relationship throughout school and how that blossoms and how they fall in love with one another. And then Efemelu moves to America, and it's planned that Abinze will join her there, but in some, like, it just doesn't happen, and he ends up living as a undocumented immigrant in the UK. So you're sort of visiting, you're hearing about their lives together, then their lives separately, one thriving, one not thriving, then back to Nigeria, and again roles swap over, and it's just amazingly written. It made me ask questions about race I didn't even know I had, and I just think it's an amazing book, beautifully written, just gorgeous. I love this book so much. Right, we're now on to the year of 2016. 10 books on this list. Again, I did it in sort of reverse order. So I started with book number 10, which was The Fox and the Star by Coralie Bickford Smith, which again is one of those books that I'm a bit surprised it ended up there. Perfectly lovely book, but look back on it and think, was that a 5-star read? Did you really love that much? Like, it's fine, and the illustrations are gorgeous and the story's lovely, but like, definitely I wouldn't include that as one of my bestest books ever. So yeah, so not going to include that one. The next one is Names for the Sea, Strangers in Iceland by Sarah Moss, which is a book that I really do love, and I do think it's worthy of being on my best books of the past 5 years, because it is one that I revisit on the regular. And I guess if someone was to say to me now, you've got to read this, I'd be like, great news, I love reading that book. It's a non-fiction account of Sarah Moss moving to Iceland with her husband and her 2 young boys after she takes a job there. And you sort of hear the ins and outs of that move, what it's like to be living in Reykjavik, things that are going on there at the time, history of the country, and I really enjoyed it. It was really laid out beautifully for me, and the description, I mean, Sarah Moss's writing is amazing. I love her. So yeah, and I would include that in there. So well done so far, 3. So going well so far. The next one is the first of a series of Daphne du Maurier books that are included in these favourites list, and this one is Frenchmans Creek by Daphne du Maurier. Now I've got to say, I love Daphne du Maurier. I really love Daphne du Maurier, but if I'm being true to myself, there's only one that really deserves to be on my best books of the past 5 years, and it's not Frenchmans Creek. That's not to say that Frenchmans Creek isn't a great book. It really is. It's a 5-star book. I loved it. I've loved writing. I love the fact that this is almost a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and a bit different from our other books, but it's not worthy of a place on that list in my opinion. Then the next one is Shelter by Jung Yun. This was a really great book that I very much enjoyed. Actually, that's probably due a reread, isn't it? Here it is up here. Can you see that there? No. That is a book that I think was doing the sort of like booktube rounds in 2016. It's one of the books you can't really say much about because something happens in the first sort of chapter which the rest of the plot develops from, so you can't really give much away on that, but very well written and sort of tense, and there's a particular scene in it, there's a lot of money troubles and things like that, and I remember there being a particular scene in a supermarket where the protagonist of the book is not sure that all of this shopping that's going in his trolley is going to be able to afford it, and like the build up of him walking around this supermarket and finally getting to the cash desk and being like, oh my god, is my card going to work, blah blah blah. Like, I remember feeling really tense during that. Brilliantly written book, very well enjoyed, but yeah, I'm not going to put it on my best books of the last 5 years. The next one is another Daphne du Maurier book. This is Jamaica Inn. Very good book, but not deserving of a place on the best books of the last 5 years. Jamaica Inn is a book that I have reread. Actually, I haven't reread Frenchmans Creek, but I have reread Jamaica Inn, and very atmospheric. I mean, there's no other words really you can use when describing Daphne du Maurier's writing. Like, atmospheric is like the peak word, but very well enjoyed. But yeah, not deserving of a place on the best on the best 10 of the last 5 years. The next one is another graphic novel. As I said, this stands for this graphic novel as it does the previous ones, and that's 100 Nights of Hero by Isabel Greenberg. I think I was just a bit swept up in the graphic novel hype back then, because realistically that isn't one of my favourite books of the past 5 years. Nor is this next one either, and that's The Vegetarian by Han Kang, a book that I very much enjoyed at the time, recommended to a lot of people that year, and still would recommend now, but looking back, it isn't one of my favourite books. The next one is definitely not one of my favourite books, and this was a book that I loved and really raved on about. You'll probably remember the early days of my channel if you've been here for a while, me talking about this book, and that's The Year of Living Danishly by Helen Russell. Similar to Names for the Sea, in that it's about a woman who moves to Denmark with her husband, who takes a job working there for Legoland. She moves to quite a rural part of Denmark. But what I will say on revisiting this, and I have revisited it a few times, not in the past year or so, but there's a lot of sort of like white privilege in there, and I mean like a lot. And on like the third listening to it, I remember thinking, oh God, did I really love this as much as I did? And yeah, it's great in that I love to hear someone's experience of moving from a country that they've always lived in to moving to another country. But sometimes it's a bit like, oh, the silly Danes rolling their eyes and like scoffing a bit at their lives. And I think, oh God, is that as respectful as it could be? So yeah, so that is a book that at the time it really did the job and I really enjoyed it. But now with a bit of distance, I feel a bit about it. So yeah, it happens, guys. Our lives are developing the whole time and our personalities are too. The next one is another book by Sarah Moss, The Tidal Zone. A book that I very, very much enjoyed reading. Again, a big sort of booktube moment book in 2016. And I remember thinking at the time I didn't even really want to read it. I mentioned this actually in the book, in the actual video where I talk about it being my favourite book of the year, because it's got quite a lot to do with death, and I was like, do I really want to read a book about death all the time? But I read it and I really, really enjoyed it. You follow Mim, who's had an episode at school whereby her heart stopped, and they're not quite sure how this has happened, but the family are dealing with it, and you're sort of seeing different members of the family deal from it, and a lot of it is told from the perspective of a father who's a stay-at-home dad, which is a perspective you don't often hear from. You're also hearing from his father's perspective, and there's sort of like stories within stories, and yeah, it was just really, really well done, and that is definitely due a reread. A very, very well written book. And then the next book, which was my favourite book of that year, and again one of my favourite books of my life, so pleased so far that both years, both of my favourite books have ended up being favourite books of all time, and that's Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, which you all know is one of my favourite ever books. It's sultry, it's sensual, it's got such a plot twist I wasn't expecting. Even now when I think about that plot twist, I'm like, bloody well done, babes, well done, Daphne. Yeah, it's got like so much character development, and like the characters in it are just fantastic, and there's moments, like such cinematic moments written in the book that you can just play out perfectly in your head. I've read the book twice. I've listened to the audiobook 3 times. The audiobook's actually very, very good. I would recommend it. It's on Audible. It's narrated by Anna Massey, I think it is. She does a great job. And yeah, basically since I've read that in 2016, I've read it every year since, which has been lovely to revisit. But yeah, one of my favourite books, if not my favourite. But I don't know, because I love Americana too. Both favourite books ever. So let's highlight that as well. So that is 2015 and 2016 done, and we've got 4 books for the list of my best books of the past 5 years. So feeling pretty pleased with that. Right, on to 2007. 2017. Now this is the year I said when I've only got 9 books. I don't know what I had planned, but I say in the video a number of times, my 10 books of 2017, but there is only 9 books there. So unless I just didn't mention one that I didn't have with me, I don't know what happened. But I did it again in reverse order. So number 10 that year was Another Night Before Christmas by Carol Ann Duffy, which is such a lovely book, and it really is something beautiful. It's a tiny little poetry collection, like literally this big. No, not even a poetry collection, like one poem. By Carol Ann Duffy, illustrated by Rob Ryan, who's this gorgeous artist who sort of does, you may well have seen his work, it's got a lot of scalloped edges and sort of cutouts and things like that. And yeah, this is, oh, David's home. Hello, Bebe.
Yo.
You alright?
Yeah.
Did you get all your bits?
Yeah.
You bought me flowers? You're so cute. Yeah, and it's a joyous little book, and I really love reading it every Christmas. I read it on a cozy reading night, I think, for the first time, and really enjoyed it, and I revisit every Christmas. Love it, but does it deserve a book on, like, does it deserve, is it worthy of a place on the best books of the last 5 years? I don't know if it is, in a completely, like, I love it way, but I just don't envisage it being there at the end. So we'll leave that for the minute. The next one is a children's book that I really do love, and it's also lovely because one of my friends wrote it, so it's double lovely, and that's Franklin's Fine Bookshop by Jen Campbell and illustrated by Katie Harnett. There is now 3 of these. I love all of them. David loves all of them. Whenever we get them, and that is seemingly the end of the series now. So whenever we get them in the post, we've always been so excited and just sort of instantly read them to one another. The stories are great. They're hilarious. They're heartfelt. They're just so joyous, and really sort of important as well. They've got really lovely messages in there for adults and children alike. The illustrations are also beautiful. Lovely books. But again, in the same way that I love Another Night Before Christmas, I don't see it being there on my bestest, my last 5 years of best book, so that one's not going on there. And nor is this next one, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. This is a book, a collection. There's actually 2 of these volumes now of books where it has one page has a gorgeous illustration of a woman in the sort of in history, and then the page opposite has writing about that woman. Now, when I read these, I was, again, this was like sort of the beginning of these thousands of books that are now out there, which is amazing for young girls to sort of be able to get their hands on all sorts of books. I've got a few here: Fantastic Female Adventurers, even adult books like 100 Nasty Women of History. I feel like the Rebel Girls, Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, was almost like the beginning of all that. And I loved them at the time, I really loved them. But I remember being a bit surprised by a few of the people that were in there. For example, Margaret Thatcher appeared in there, and recently J.K. Rowling has sort of put another nail in the coffin of me not being able to enjoy any of her work because she keeps doing daft bloody stuff. So yeah, with a bit of distance from those, I don't feel like they're my favourite books, and I almost question the people that have been involved in those. Some of those are completely worthy of being in those books, but I feel like there's always going to be like, it's never going to be everyone's cup of tea, a big anthology of something, is it? And that, now with a bit of distance, isn't my cup of tea. The next one though, I think I'm gonna highlight this next one, and that's Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. Now, this is a book that I have revisited many times during my life, most recently the beginning of this year, so literally like 2 weeks ago, and I love it. I love Bridget, I love Helen Fielding's writing, I love how I can open that book at any time and there'll be something on that page that will make me howl with laughter, and also I can't believe that it was written over 20 years ago and how it still feels so relevant today. And the things she says, like one of the things she says, she was like, this is written in 1996. She said, I can't believe that we live in a country where no one is prepared to queue or wait for anything, and yet I can go to work in London and I will see people queuing outside of coffee shops for coffee. And I'm like, oh my god, that's still true of now. Like, it's just, I just love it. It's hilarious, it's nostalgic, it's amazing, it's being highlighted. So we've got 5 books now, which is actually pretty good because we're about halfway through. Yeah, we are about halfway through. The next one is a non-fiction book called The Gender Gaze by Juno Dawson. A brilliant book, an account of gender, and Juno herself was born with the gender of male and has transitioned to become a female. And what better perspective to hear about a gender from someone who has been both. In fact, I think that might even be the tagline on one of them. I can't see it from there. Oh, great news, I've just done 10,000 steps even though I'm sat down, but great news anyway. Brilliant book, very interesting. I've listened to the audiobook of it as well, because it's brilliant. And also, like, Juno and I don't actually know how old Juno is, but I think we must be about the same age because we're really into the same shit, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Spice Girls, and all sort of like 90s references. A great book, a very, very great book. The next one is Winter by Ali Smith. And Ali Smith, I've got a bit of a strange relationship with her because when I read her stuff, I'm always thinking, like, as I'm reading it, really enjoying this, and then with a bit of distance, I couldn't even tell. I think in Winter there's something about a disembodied head. I think it might be to do with someone visiting their mother for Christmas, and he's brought someone with him because he's broken up with his girlfriend. But yeah, I can't really remember much about that book, so that's not worthy. The next one of so this is sort of like number 3 on the list because, as I said, there's only 9 in 2017. That's English Animals by Laura Kay, which is a book that I really, really have enjoyed. You're following Mirka. I always so like, this is a sign of a good book, isn't it? Because I've read this book once and I remember all the characters. Mirka has she's looking for a job. She doesn't English isn't her first language, and she's from an Eastern European country, and she gets a job working in a country house, and she thinks she's going to be a sort of like au pair, and it turns out she's not. She'll be helping the chap in the relationship with, what's it called when you stuff dead animals? Taxidermy.
Alexa, stop.
Taxidermy, great news. Yeah, so she's helping him in taxidermy, and yeah, it's really, really brilliantly written because she's got this intense friendship with this chap in the relationship, but she's also romantically interested in the woman in the relationship. It's great. It starts off being quite, the language in it starts off because she's not very familiar with the English language, being quite choppy and things, and by the end it's flowing beautifully, and I just think it was a really well crafted book, one that I very, very much enjoyed. I sort of want to highlight it. Do you know what? I'll put a little highlight next to it because that's as close as I've come to almost highlighting something. But I'll leave that because I think there might be space for others. And then the next two are by the same author, and in the same way that I've fallen out with J.K. Rowling, I've also fallen out with this author, and that's Lionel Shriver. So numbers 2 and 1 that year were The Post-Birthday World and The Standing Chandelier. I still stand by the fact that The Post-Birthday World is a really, really good book written. A bit similar to Life After Life, actually, with a lot of like what ifs. It follows a couple who it follows a couple, and every year they go out with one of their friends for his birthday, and one year the chap in the couple can't make it, so the woman goes along anyway, and at the end of the night, with her having dinner with their friend, in one instance they share a kiss and in another instance they don't, and you follow the pathways of their lives from that point on. And I did really enjoy the book, but Lionel Shriver's just said some bonkers shit, hasn't she? So I cannot include books by people who say bonkers shit in the first books of the last 5 years. So that's not being included. But we're on to 2018 now. Cheers, Happy New Year 2018. And the first book, it's got to go on there because even though it's not a reading book, this is the book that I've picked up most in the past 5 years and used most. And if I had my copy here now, you would see that it has been loved, loved, loved. And that's The Green Roasting Tin by Rukmini Iyer, because it's such a good cookbook. It's the best cookbook I've ever used, ever. It is all, you get one tin and you put ingredients in that tin, and then at the end of that, you've got the most delicious meal ever. And I'm still, out of a recipe book of about 50 recipes, there's probably like 1 or 2 duds in there, and that is incredible in itself, and it's just been such a help for me. I became a pescatarian at the beginning of 2015, and then have not eaten meat since 2016. So yeah, it's been like the biggest help ever, because it's got a vegan section, it's got a vegetarian section, and I just think it's the best cookbook ever. And if you don't have it yet and you've been watching this channel for a while, then I can't believe I haven't managed to force this on you yet, because all I ever talk about is how good that cookbook is, and it is fantastic. It's the best cookbook ever. I love it. The next one on that list, number 9 on that list, is Almost Loved by Louise O'Neill. Louise O'Neill's first adult novel. Very much enjoyed it, as much as Only Ever Yours, but not, I don't think I would include it. No, I wouldn't include it in my best books of the past 5 years. Again, for the same thing for the next one, really, a book that I've really, really enjoyed, A Keeper by Graham Norton, that I listened to on audiobook, and actually David listened to it on audiobook as well. Really great twisty tale, set in Ireland, love book set in Ireland. Graham Norton does the audiobook, really enjoyed it. Again, recommended it to a lot of people. And recommended the audiobook to a lot of people because the audiobook is really very good, but not worthy of a place on the bestest 10 of the last 5 years. Eat Up by Ruby Tando is the next one on the list, which is a non-fiction book about relationships with food, basically, and about food from different countries. Ruby was anorexic for a while, so it's about a relationship with food then. It's sort of like love letters to food and all sorts of really great, interesting perspectives and little mini essays, I guess, written on food. Very much enjoyed it, but haven't revisited it. Had plans to revisit it last year and didn't, so I think on that alone, nah, it's not going to make it. The next one is The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters. How many have I highlighted so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've only got space for 4 more. And maybe English Animals, depending. So The Paying Guest, that's a very, very good book, The Paying Guest by Sarah Waters. I've read a lot of Sarah Waters, and that is my favourite Sarah Waters. That's the only Sarah Waters that's ever appeared on one of these lists. It's a really, really big book about, and it's about a mother and daughter who rent out one of their 2 of their rooms to a couple. And then the daughter from the mother and daughter, and then the woman out of the couple, they have a relationship with each other, and the first half of the book is sort of like this urgent love story, really like stolen moments and smooching in the corridors and things like that, and then something happens exactly halfway through the book, and then the rest of the book is sort of this urgent crime story, I guess, and I very much enjoyed it, and I don't feel like I can put it on there because I've only ever read it once, but I had forgotten about it, to be honest, and maybe this year, in fact, I'll put it on my Audible wish list and listen to it again. I read it the first time round, but I'll listen to it and see what I think of it then, but very much enjoyed that. The next one is Lethal Right, written by Robert Galbraith, which is the pen name of J.K. Rowling. Very much enjoy this series, but again, trying to put a bit of distance between myself and J.K. Rowling these days. And then the next one is one that I really, really love. This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. This is a non-fiction book about Adam Kay when he was a junior doctor, and his sort of the diaries of him as a junior doctor. A great book, a really, really funny and heartfelt book, a real page turner. I work in the NHS, so I feel like I've got a sort of inside window on the things he's mentioning and a lot of the experiences he's had, not particularly with like medical situations, but definitely with sort of like computer systems and patients and like targets and things like that. I can definitely associate myself with. It's got to get a highlight. I really, really loved it. Really, really loved it. Really loved it. The next one is Big Bones by Laura Dockrell. Again, a brilliant book, such a fun book, and a book that was so important. Is this going to get a highlight? I don't know. So it's about a young girl called Bluebell, BB or Big Bones, and she is body positive. She loves herself, and she is unashamedly loves herself, and I feel like I could have done with her when I was a teenager, because I wasn't very kind to myself back then, and even up until the very recent future I haven't been very kind to myself. And I love the book, and the book's told from, it's really funny, it's got really, really funny bits in it, but it's also got really like important, sensible bits for a teenage book in it. It's going to get like a little, maybe I'll come back to it highlight. I think that if it's between that and English Animals, I'll go for that. But great book. Oh, this next one's got to be highlighted because it's one of my favourite books ever. Oh god, Normal People by Sally Rooney. I think this might be one of my favourite books ever. I really loved it, and it was a real delight to me. I've highlighted it. It was a real delight to me because I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, and everyone was raving about it, and I was like, I don't think it's that good. Like I remember trying to find the bit in it that everyone was going wild for, but Normal People is just amazing. I've said this on a number of times, but it's like reading a play. Like it's like when you're reading it, it's like watching a play. You see these things play out so beautifully in front of you. You follow Connell and Marianne. And they're a couple, and you follow their sort of relationship, friendship, sexual relationship, romantic relationship from school all the way up until when they leave university, and both of them are in different sort of social standings at any one time, and they sort of fluctuate in between, and it's great and it's real, and it just feels really real, and I love it. And I listened to the audiobook of it last year, and I love that, and I can't. Yeah, it's one. We bought it for about 3 people for Christmas this year. We really love that book. So David hasn't read it. I think it's amazing. And then the last book that year was Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend, which is a book that I very much enjoy. But this is the good thing about doing this with a bit of distance, because I feel like with a bit of distance, as much as I enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to the next book coming out, those are books that are very much sort of fun for me, but I don't think I'd include them in my bestest books. I've listened now to the audiobook of both of the books, because there's a second in the series. I think the third in the series is out in August this year, and I think the audiobook, I much prefer the experience of the audiobook. So yeah, I don't think that would be included in there. And we're almost there, guys. We've almost made it. So let me count. We're now on last year's best book. So I've got 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So there's space for 2 more, or potentially 1 more if I want to include either Big Bones or English Animals. Let's have a go. Let's go through this. So the first one is An American Marriage. Again, the difficult thing with this is that there's not much distance between this. So unless they've really had a really profound effect on me in the last year, then maybe they won't be appearing on my list. But that's not to say that they wouldn't appear. Say if I did this video again in 5 years' time, and I was like the best 10 books of the last 10 years, then maybe this whole list would be on there. Who knows? Right, the first one is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction last year. Brilliant book. I'm not going to go into too much details about these because there is a chance that you've watched my best books of last year, and you'll have seen me talking about all of those. I wouldn't include it in my best books of the 5 years at the moment. The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. Really important book. Don't think it's made quite the sort of like big impact on me for the past 5 years. The Christmas Chronicles by Nigel Slater. Do you know what? I think this is going on there. The Christmas Chronicles by Nigel Slater I've described on many occasions as a gift. It is a gift to people who love food and who love cooking, and it was a gift to me, and I listened to the audiobook of it this year for the first time. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. The actual book itself is gorgeous. It's got some of the most beautiful food photography I've ever seen. The pen's out. That's getting a highlight. I think that is fantastic book, absolutely fantastic. The next one is Veg by Jamie Oliver, and I'm not giving this a place on there because I think it's a great cookbook and a really big moment for me this year to have a Jamie Oliver cookbook out, but I don't think it's as good as the Green Roasting Tin, and the Green Roasting Tin's made it on there, Veg isn't making it on there. Turning the Tide on Plastic by Lucy Siegel, again a super important and accessible book, which I think is, this is another book I bought people for Christmas. I bought this for my dad for Christmas. Really important. Oh God, that almost does deserve to be on there. No, I've only ever done it once. Let's leave it as it is. Scapegoat by Daphne du Maurier. I love this book, but I feel the same about it as I do the other Daphne du Mauriers, and that's only one Daphne du Maurier deserves to be on this list, and that is Rebecca. 5 Days of Fog by Anna Freeman. Again, a great book. This one I definitely need a bit of time away from, because I feel like I read it in 2 bursts. So I read it over my birthday, and then I stopped reading it because I read Christmas books during December, and then I read it after Christmas. So yeah, that's very new to me, so I don't feel like I can do that yet. Then Lowborn by Kerry Hudson. That is such a good book and so important, but have I got enough space away from it? Do I love it enough at the moment? I don't think I do at the moment. I think it's really important and an amazing book, but yeah, I think maybe I need to revisit that. Oh, this is hard because the next one I really love, and that's Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. I really want to include it. I've only read it once. I'm going to include it. I'm going to include it because I love it so much. And then the last one was The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, another book which I think is amazing, but I don't think I'm going to put it on there because I think I've reached my 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, 10 books I've got with 2 sort of honourable mentions that I've highlighted because I love so much. Let's do them. So my 10 best books of the past 5 years are as follows. Life After Life by Kate Atkinson, Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Names for the Sea, Strangers in Iceland by Sarah Moss, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding, The Green Roasting Tin by Rukimi Iya, This Is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay, Normal People by Sally Rooney, The Christmas Chronicles by Nigel Slater, and Queenie by Candice Carty-Williams. And that is a brilliant list of books. I feel like that really represents the sort of reader that I am as well. Like, I love food writing, I love non-fiction almost as much as I love fiction. I think there's as much, if we include the cookbooks, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh no, 4, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, there's 4 non-fiction books on there. The fiction is sort of like literary. I feel like Queenie and Bridget Jones are quite similar in their sort of like following a single woman negotiate her way through life in London. Yeah, I'm pleased with that. I'm really pleased with that list. So let me know if you have read any of these books that I've mentioned. It's been a bit of a slog. Thanks for sitting. If you've made it the whole way through, congratulations. Let me know if any of the books I've mentioned at all are any of your favourites. And I loved doing this and would love to see more people do this. So if you have done this or if you're planning on doing this, then do let me know. And yeah, I guess I'll see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye!